Well, what's up there, everyone? How's it going today? It's kind of funny, the synchronicity of this video, what I'm going to talk about. I was going to make this yesterday. A couple days ago, I made a video about censorship, and the next morning I woke up and my account was frozen on YouTube because of the algorithms. They seek out certain topics, and of course, certain videos. It's not even always kratom videos, but sometimes just herb videos in general. Just get nailed by the algorithm. So I write to YouTube and say, hey, this is bullshit. And most of the time they just deny me. This time I sent a thing thinking, well, instead of saying, please reinstate my video or please don't give me a strike, I just said, dude, you guys are ridiculous if this is what you think is worthy of censoring. And it was just a discussion. I was able to watch the video. It was 4 years old. And it talked about kratom, of course, which is controversial. So in the video, I watched it, and it was basically saying, be safe, be smart, don't overdo things, don't be an idiot. It was a harm reduction video. You all know I don't sit out here and say, oh, let's just get high. Even when I talk about drugs, and a lot of people are very turned off by that, like, hey, like psychedelics, for example. If you talk about that, some people say, oh man, you give acid to your kids and shit like that. It's like, dude, get a fucking brain. No, of course not. I took psychedelics when I was younger and I learned a lot from it, and I haven't taken any in a couple of years, but I'm about ready to. But that's another story altogether. I guess the point being that YouTube actually reinstated my channel, and they just made it for not minors can watch the video. Like, that's fine. I should have probably done that in the first place, but it was 4 years ago. But here I am now with being able to talk about originally what I wanted to talk about, which was censorship in a way. But it's really, who do we trust? And because we can't trust anybody, the level of censorship is becoming more extreme. And as I mentioned in the previous video, we are doing it to ourselves. We are self-censoring by telling others what they can and can't say and what they shouldn't say. And I mentioned how that's a dangerous curve, and it can lead to extreme, dictatorships. And so I'm going to start this off by saying basically the main point of the video, which is that when watchdogs and whistleblowers, scientists, and the media are all the enemy, we're fucked, people. We're completely fucked. I'm not kidding. I mean, this is, if you look in history, this is the first step towards the decline of any society, is when you distrust experts. And I know some people are out there already on their keyboards thinking, oh, no, experts are always wrong. Science is always wrong. Science makes a lot of mistakes. Totally agree with you. I have absolutely no doubt that you're right. But I'm going to get into that in a moment. This isn't meant to point the finger at anyone. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a way for us to stop pointing fingers at one another and start looking within and figuring out what we need as individuals. So when I talk about watchdogs, I'm saying, okay, so we have scientific groups who make a lot of wonderful discoveries that have brought us longer lives. Are they happier? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But when watchdogs of those groups become lapdogs for politicians and corporations, that's when society loses its trust completely, and it erodes public trust within the scientific community. And it's disgusting. This is what's happened because of decades of people standing in front of the TV with a white coat on saying, cigarettes aren't bad for you, sugar isn't bad for you. Anybody with half a brain can figure out by the time they're 40 at least that, wait, you've got to walk the middle road. There are no extremes. Some things are good, some are bad, but there are a lot of people that want your money, and so they're going to hire people for the meat industry, for the dairy industry, lobbyists for the sugar industry, and so all of us are left clamoring for real fucking knowledge. We want to know what's really going on. I mean, we are desperate to have facts, and we're living in a society where we don't have any. At least the ones we do have are so obscured that people aren't willing to even listen. And that's very dangerous. We're doomed if we don't believe in the basic media, let's say. And let me just back up for a minute here. I'm not supporting mainstream media. I hear this claim a lot. Oh, if you believe anything the media says, then you're completely, deluded. Perhaps. But let me ask you this. If you don't listen to any media whatsoever, how do you know anything? Because media are the only ones reporting on these discoveries. Unless you read scientific journals, which I do. I love to read science journals, but the media, there are actually journalists still out there seeking to get the truth. Doesn't mean they have the full truth. It means that if you're willing to look through and wade through the bullshit, you can finally get a little grasp on maybe what's going on, but not if you're just listening to one source. The irony of this is that so many people claim, they talk about anybody who has an opinion that sounds like other people's opinions. They say, oh, you just listen to mainstream media. The irony is that so many of these people are using talking points that obviously came from, say, Fox News, mainstream media, the biggest mainstream media outlet in the country. So, we can't just take the opinions from one side merely because they're filtered. It's a filtering thing. Fox News says something, it's filtered through YouTubers, it's filtered through other YouTubers, and all of a sudden, well, I've heard this in multiple places, so it must be fact. Same thing happens on the left. I heard this in CNN, but I also heard it from this YouTuber, and I heard it from this guy. But really, we can never get a full grasp on what's going on. The erosion of trust in experts. The interesting thing about this is that even the people who completely distrust everyone are still part of the system that they inhabit. If you're tweeting, if you're posting Facebook, if you're posting videos or commenting on videos on YouTube, you're part of the system. You're using the internet, you're using devices, you're using technology. And therefore, we want the technology to work, for example. You probably have a home, you probably eat food, and a job. So you want to make sure if you go down to the store and you buy cleaning supplies, for example, that they're not going to kill your kids. You want to make sure that if you buy food, it's not loaded with some sort of a chemical that's going to kill you and your kids. Because of this, we trust some experts, but only the ones that we want to trust. And this is where it gets interesting, because people are, it's selective bias, basically. In the same way that we select which news articles we want to believe or which people we want to believe. We do the same for evidence toward what we want to think is healthy for us or good for us or safe for us. And of course, a lot of people die from stupid, unproven treatments, but a lot of people die also from stupid, proven treatments like pharmaceuticals, which even our own government's promoting pharmaceuticals now. The president's promoting pharma. The president's telling you big pharma's your answer. Take hydroxychloroquine. And I bring that up to make a point that a lot of people will believe that. They'll go out and take it, not looking at the statistics that it can actually kill you and cause heart murmurs and all types of different blood problems. So let's move back into the claim that all scientists are ideological zealots, that they're all out to just get a paycheck and a life for somebody. That would be easy to say if you could prove it, but no one can, because we know that there's one issue here I want to cover. You have to separate science from the scientific method, and I've tried to discuss this with people and they don't seem to get it. There are scientists who use the scientific method to skew results and find what they want, but there's also just the scientific method itself, which stands alone. And if you don't remember basic science, it's pretty much observe, formulate a hypothesis, test your theory. It's that simple. And if you can repeat that theory and test it over and over, then maybe this will kill you, or maybe this won't kill you. But you can never be 100% sure. Of course not. Which brings us to the outliers. The outliers are the cases that stand out where science was wrong or has failed us. Those are the ones that people will always select when they want to deny everything having to do with facts. Say, this person lied, therefore everybody lied. It's a fallacy. It's the same one people use with politicians, that if one politician's a liar, then everyone's a liar, except for my guy, right? So a lot of scientists are ideological zealots, of course, that's not in denial of that, but those are the ones who are paid really well to come up with, oh, smoking is healthy, that kind of stuff. So we get to the point where we don't trust anybody. And that brings us really to my, to the kind of, I guess the peak of the conversation here, which would be that when we lose trust in anybody who has spent their lives studying something that we haven't, when we lose trust in the media and the people who are covering issues, even though some of the stories are false and a lot are true, when we decide what we want to believe is true based on emotion, we lose touch with reason. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I just say that we're back to superstition. I feel like we're falling back into the dark ages. That there was a time when people were trusted. The erosion in that public trust has come not just because people have been let down, but because they've been told that these findings aren't true, because they don't agree with what we want. Think about the oil industry, who for decades has told us that burning fossil fuels has no damage done to the environment whatsoever, that it's just oil, it's fine, it's not going to hurt anything, the earth goes through natural. And I'm not just talking about climate change here, I'm talking about basic pollution. Because the minute you say climate change, somebody's triggered, no, it's not real, it's all fake, the earth goes through changes. Really? Are you a geologist? Have you taken historical weather patterns into account? Have you actually looked at the research? Or do you just hear one scientist saying, oh, the earth goes through this all the time? As if we really understand the full breadth of the past. Because if you do look at the science, you see that, oh, CO2 levels haven't risen this fast in millions of years. And then you see, CO2 has a certain imprint from fossil fuels. The CO2 produced from burning fossil fuels is slightly different in chemical composition than the CO2 that's produced naturally. So yes, you can quantify it, you can measure it, you can look at statistics, and you can say, oh shit, the climate's getting warmer. But there are always going to be people that are going to skew the results, that are going to argue that. The point I wanted to make on that was that the oil industry lied for decades, but back in the 60s, their top scientists that they hired, and all of this is declassified information, you can look it up yourself, says that, they were well aware that this could cause global catastrophic climate issues because of the particulates in the air and massive death. Since we've been on lockdown, actually, as fucked up as it is, we have 17% lower emissions in the world, which has actually caused clean air. And people don't realize how many millions of people die from pollution every year. So, I'm getting off track, but the point is, who wants your money and who wants your attention and who wants to convince you and who has the money to do it? And the oil industry can always convince you that green energy is just about carbon taxes and these greenies are just out, tree huggers, just out to screw everybody over. The absurdity of it has shown me that there's no way to discuss our way out of this. There's no way to argue our way or to bring up facts to people, because when we've lost trust in everyone, nobody gives a shit anymore. And it's the Wild West of knowledge out there. My thought was that the internet would bring a little bit of sense and sensibility, but it hasn't. It's just caused an echo chamber of nonsense and a bunch of hateful, spiteful people who can sit behind their computers all day and just type nasty messages to people. They have the time to actually look into people's personal lives, or to worry about a politician every day, or to worry about who's doing what, and those dirty Dems, those dirty Democrats, just really, we have to get past this, but I don't think we can. I really don't. And whenever you bring up one of these issues about the environment, like I said before, it will always be this issue of jobs. That's how they get people. That is the propaganda tool that's used to convince people that saving the environment or helping our environment, living more healthy, is a bad thing to them. They say that, and people believe it. They're like, we need to burn more oil and more coal, as if it's something to celebrate and cherish, because that's what they're told. But they say, well, if you eliminate these, we'll lose all these jobs. They totally ignore the other side of it. And people believe them. And I just like to say, we didn't get here to where we are. And I'm talking about in the good ways, not in the fucked up ways. But we didn't get all this technology, all these discoveries, and medicine, which people might ridicule pharma until all of a sudden they have a heart problem. Then they're right at their doctor getting pharmaceuticals for it. We didn't get here by always being wrong. We got here by being wrong, correcting it, being wrong, correcting it, being wrong, correcting it. If you want to talk about bias in science, I mean, the honesty is that there's tons of it. But what has bias brought us, or what has the science brought us, rather, as opposed to, say, the church, which suppressed Galileo and the telescope for, say, 100 years? The groups that have held back advancement for, not for living within the natural realm or saying, oh, we don't need this, but rather saying, we don't want people to know that things aren't what we told them they are. And if you're one of the people who believes what other people tell you things are, well, congratulations, you're a human being. Every one of us has been taught by somebody. Teachers, gurus, the list goes on. But we have to formulate our own hypothesis on the existence of life and what's important by living it. I guess. I mean, as for the media and the watchdogs, as I was saying earlier, who watches the watchers? Because there are a lot of people out there saying, well, these groups are watching these groups, but who's watching them? And that's absolutely correct. You are, I am, we are the people who have to look through all this shit to figure out what's really going on. It takes a lot more work than watching some YouTuber give you a 30-minute video each day on what's going on in the world, or, what the greatest new, fucked up thing your government is doing to you is, Because I used to believe a lot of bullshit, or at least half believe it, but I dig. I hear something that sounds legitimate, I do the research and find it's usually bullshit. So, in other words, there's no one person on earth who has all this knowledge of what's going on in the news. They all get their news from the internet. It's your job, our job, to do the research and to do the digging. And to be honest, I prefer to read a science journal over trusting some YouTuber any day of the week. However, it's not about YouTube. I had somebody say, well, you watch YouTube too. I said, well, yeah, but I'm watching scientists, not politicians. There's a huge difference. It's all about content. It's not about watching a network like it would be with, CNN or something else. When you watch YouTube, it depends on what you want to see. So what do you spend your time watching and listening to? And if all we're doing is listening to YouTubers tell us what the news is, then we're really doing an injustice to each other. So I definitely would leave you with this. I don't listen to basement experts behind their keyboard tell me how to grow my garden if they've never grown a garden. I don't listen to people who have never left their home tell me about how to do carpentry or how to build a house. You can sit there and read about how to do carpentry, but to try to explain it is a completely different thing if you've never lived the experience. And so many people have never lived the experience. So, on a couple last notes, one of the biggest problems of what's happening now, not just with the virus, but with the world in general, is that fear drives wariness. The more fearful people are, the more wary they are to take advice from others. But anger makes us take risks that we wouldn't ordinarily take. And that's why people are out there, say, protesting for not wearing a mask. It's like, if you don't want to wear a mask, then don't wear a mask. You don't have to stand in front of the Capitol. Nobody's forcing you to. But that's life, It's business. It's complicated. But fear and anger both cause emotions to stir, right? So both of these responses to the situation we are having right now can lower your immune system. So if you're scared, your immune system's dropping. If you're getting angry at others, it's also costing you valuable energy for your immune system. So that's the irony, I guess, that being fearful will make you worse off, right? And getting to the root of our fear and our anger, both, are super crucial to getting through hard times. And when it comes to who do we trust, I guess this is where people start to go back to believing their pastors over anyone else, or believing their president, or believing their local government, or believing their neighbors, whatever it might be. But I just like to say, if whatever you believe, trust yourself. Trust yourself by doing the research and finding that we can have scapegoats, we can point the finger and blame, but you'll find that the people who point the fingers at others the most are often have the weakest argument. If you spend an entire, discussion just pointing the finger at the president or pointing the finger at China or pointing the finger at anyone because of any situation that's going on, it's not going to solve the problem. The problem has to be solved outside of that person. And this is, I guess, kind of the root of why we have so much suspicion. The internet, I'll say it again, the internet is a megaphone for idiots. It's allowed conspiracy theories to run rampant to the point where I'm just cringing because I know a lot of them are true. But so many more of them are complete bullshit. It's just utter nonsense that has been disinformation that's just been stuffed into people's heads. And they believe it. It's dividing people, it's dividing groups, families, relationships. People are becoming self-censoring. People are afraid to speak out on certain issues because they'll get attacked. People are getting death threats for being a public official who is hired to tell us how to be safe. I mean, scientists are getting death threats for having their own views on things that they actually researched. You have to consider that for a minute. We're living in some fucked up times. People are acting like complete morons. And so I'm just more than willing to just kind of back out of the whole thing and just sit in my corner and think what I think, and you think what you think, and it is what it is. I don't expect miracles in the future of humanity. I'd love to have a really good outlook on the future, but I just don't. The rosy picture that could have happened, any type of utopia, was completely annihilated by this experience to show how selfish people are. But there's a positive side too, also. But I won't get into that because that would ruin the video. Got to be negative all the way through.